Hello everyone and welcome to today's video on Dockerfile tutorial at Simplilearn. Do you know, friends, that in 2010, Solomon Hykes founded Cloud, a platform as a service company. Cloud faced significant challenges with scalability, consistency, and managing dependency across diverse customer environments. To address these issues, Hykes and his team developed a tool to isolate applications in containers, ensuring they ran same regardless of the underlying infrastructure. This innovation led to the creation of what we know as Docker today, which was open sourced in 2013, revolutionizing software development within its efficiency and ease of use. So guys, in this video, we will learn the concept behind creating a Dockerfile, and moreover, we will understand why and in which situations we need to create a Dockerfile. Now, before we move on, just a quick info, guys.
Craving a career upgrade? Subscribe, like, and comment below. Dive into the link in the description to fast-track your ambitions. Whether you're making a switch or aiming higher, Simplilearn has your back.
Simplilearn has got a DevOps Engineer certification course which is developed in collaboration with IBM, and it will help you refine your skills. Simplilearn's blended learning approach integrates live online classes with interactive labs, so you can dive into Docker, Kubernetes, Ansible, Terraform, Prometheus, Jenkins, Microsoft Azure, and the list goes on. So why are you waiting now? So hurry up and join the course. The course link is mentioned in the description box. Now, before we move on, I request you guys that do not forget to hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon for further updates. So let's get started. So guys, let's start with what is a Dockerfile. Guys, Dockerfile is a text document that specifies a Docker image. So by using a Dockerfile, you can create a personalized Docker image, which effectively sets up a custom environment tailored for use within Docker container. Now, before you delve more into Dockerfile, there are some primary concepts of Docker. Let's try to revise it. So guys, if I talk about Docker, so Docker's primary goal is to provide consistent runtime environments that can be replicated on any machine running on Docker. So what's the use of it? Basically, it eliminates the common problem of it by worked on machine. Okay, so what does that mean by a phrase? It ensures that Docker containers can deliver the same environment across all machines. Now, in order to follow this tutorial, there are two basic concepts that one should know. The first one is containers. So what exactly are containers? So guys, containers serve as a runtime environment where typically one main process runs per Docker container. Think of each Docker container as providing a single service within your project. For instance, say you launch one container for a MySQL database and another for a WordPress server. So connecting them to set up a WordPress project. Now, here you will require containers. So in the scenarios, containers can be used to run a wide range of technologies, including databases, web servers, web frameworks, test servers, big data scripts, and shell scripts. Now, this was the first part of one concept that everyone should be aware of. Now, what is a Docker image? So guys, Docker containers are initiated by running a Docker image. A Docker image is essentially a pre-configured environment for a specified technology or service. It is not a runtime itself, but rather a bundle of files, libraries, and configuration files that builds up the environment. The primary source for Docker images online is a Docker store. Simply search for a desired technology component and you can pull the image using Docker pull command that you are already, and then you are ready to launch your containers. Now, containers are created from images using the Docker run command. An image present in a container is a layered representation of your environment, containing the necessary files and configuration. So say when you start a container with Docker run, okay, so say you want to start your container. So you'll be following the Docker run command. Okay. Now Docker adds an extra read-write layer on the top of the read-only image layers. Now the most important questions now comes up, why and when you need to create a Dockerfile. Think about it, and based on the above instances I've told you, if you get an idea, then try to relate after pausing the video. Now, when existing images don't meet your project requirements, so you will need to create your own Dockerfile. Suppose, say your project's requirement has a Node.js 14 version, okay, but your system is not supporting that, okay. So in that scenario, you can use a containerized platform like Docker, and you can create your image from the Dockerfile of that respective version. So this is a common scenario which makes it crucial to understand that Dockerfile creation is an essential aspect of working with Docker. The Dockerfile includes a series of instructions that Docker follows when you run the Docker build command. So your workflow will typically look like this. So first of all, what you will do? So first step would be create a Dockerfile and specify the steps to construct your image. So this is step 1. Okay. Now basically in this step, you're creating a Dockerfile and you're specifying what are the steps that should construct your image. After that, what you have to do? You have to run the Docker build command to generate Docker image from your Dockerfile. So in this step 2, what we are going to do? We are going to run Now, in the third step, you're going to use this image, okay, and to start the container with the Docker run command. So, now typically, you begin your search for Docker images on the Docker store. So I'll show you where you're going to get the Docker store. Okay guys, so you can see I have a Docker desktop, okay, and here I can search for various images, containers, what I have created. So suppose I was talking about Node.js, okay, so see I can create a Node.js image, okay, so you see here we are getting the node and we can pull this image from here and we can include it in our project. Similarly, Mongo Express, or let me show you one more, like suppose I want JDK, okay, 7. Okay, let's see, does it have Java? Okay, they have Java, okay, and says these are the tags, okay, this is JDK 7, okay. What if I write JDK 8? Okay, let me see, okay, so this has a JDK 8 instance, but I don't think so it's correct. So it's basically the real official one is Java of this one. And it says it has a tag of 6. So either you can pull this or you can run this. Okay. So this is basically a Docker store where you are going to get all your instances for your images, which you want to apply in your project. So additionally, like GitHub also hosts numerous repositories containing Docker files. So also you can share your Docker images within your team or organization just by setting up your own Docker registry. So if you can't find the precise Docker image required for a project, like I couldn't find right now JDK 6, so you have to create your own Docker images in that instances. And this is common because many images are generic and might not fit your specific needs. So simply create a text file named Dockerfile with no extension and define your image within it. It's a standard practice to create custom images for most of the projects, including sandboxes and playgrounds. Now, let us try to understand some of the Dockerfiles basics. So guys, as I have told you earlier, that Dockerfile serves as a blueprint for building Docker images. So here are some of the key points that you should remember. The first one, that is text file with instructions. So basically, Dockerfile is a text file primarily containing instructions akin to command line actions for creating image. Then there are step-by-step instructions. So Dockerfile also provides a sequence of instruction detailing the steps needed to construct the image. Then there are standard instructions. So Dockerfiles offers a set of standard instructions for Dockerfile, including from, copy, run, env, expose, cmd, and among many others, which define various aspects of the image. Then the fourth one is automatic image building. Docker automatically constructs a Docker image by parsing and executing instructions from the Dockerfile. The fifth one is describing the build steps. From a developer or a user standpoint, Dockerfile describes the build process for the environment. Building the image from Dockerfile also allows to start the containers. Then in terms of technology context, you have to understand Dockerfile instructions alone isn't sufficient. You need to comprehend the technology context you are building for. For instance, crafting a Dockerfile for PHP project necessitates the PHP specific knowledge like configuration methods, extensions, and environment settings. The next one is leveraging the existing images. Utilize the pre-built images because it's going to save time, especially when you're experimenting with the new technologies. You can start by deploying images prepared by others without delving into the intricate details immediately. Over the time, as you tackle more complex tasks, you can enhance your understanding by studying and learning from other Dockerfiles. So this is an iterative process which allows for gradual accumulation of knowledge and expertise in Docker and the specific technologies. So guys, let us create our first Docker application. Now, you can see I have written certain code in the Dockerfile, so no need to worry about that. I'm going to explain you line by line each one of them. But let me show you how you have to proceed for creating your first image. Okay, now the first step that I want you to do is that create a directory. Say I want to create a Docker application. So say I'll choose this directory mkdir and say it would be my Docker app. Okay, so let us see, and we can see that this directory has been created. So if you do ls, okay, to check whether it exists or not, you could see that my Docker app exists and it is created at this point of time. Okay, pretty good. Now, what I want to do is that you have to create a Dockerfile. So I'm using Visual Studio Code as my text editor. You can also use the same. And you can also see that in Dockerfile, there is no extensions involved. Okay. Now, after this, just type my Alpine latest and run the application and just complete this thing. So guys, after that, what you have to do, you have to build your Docker image in the terminal. So for that, the following command is there. So I'm going to type Docker, okay, Docker build, okay, and it would be the T flag, okay, and let us keep the name as my hello world, okay, and give a dot, and let us build this image basically. And you could see now my Docker application is built up, okay, and in this there is a text file. Now guys, let us try to run our Docker application. Now what you have to do next, type this command docker run and say my hello world, because this is the name of the basically file which we have given. So my now if you try to run this command, we could see a hello world printing out here, and this has completed our execution. Now let's try to understand these code one by one. So we can see it has written all over here from Alpine latest. So what does it mean? So basically it uses the latest version of Alpine Linux as the base image, okay. Now in the next command you can see it's written run mkdir/app. So basically what it does is that it creates a directory /app inside the container. The third thing is run echo hello world. So basically, and there is a slash app slash hello text directory that has been mentioned. So it writes hello world into a file name .hello.txt inside the slash app directory. Then you could see it has written work dir slash app. So basically, it is setting the working directory to the slash app. And finally, we are seeing that it is written cmd and double comma cat and then hello.txt. Basically, it specifies the command to run when the container starts, which outputs the content of the hello text. When you build and run this Docker image, it will display hello world. And in the terminal, because cmd instructions run cat hello.txt command, which reads and outputs the content of hello.txt. So that's why you are seeing hello world right over here. So this was a very basic program that we have done right now. And in this way, we will do one more to make our concepts more clearer. So guys, in the next example, we are going to create a Dockerfile for a Python Flask web application. Now we all know that Flask is a popular micro framework for building web applications in Python. And this example is going to demonstrate how you can build a Docker image for a Flask application and run it as a container. Now you need to follow step by step. Now first, what we need to do is, let us create a working directory. So all over here, let us go to our terminal and we can say mkdir and we are going to create my Flask. Okay, so we can see that this directory has been created. Now let us dive into this directory. Okay, now step 2 is you need to create an app.py file. But how you're going to do this? Now for the same purpose, what we are going to do, so let me just open that folder first. So we can see my Flask is this and I'm going to select it. So you can see under this directory, it's showing yes that I've created my directory. And let us create a file named app.py. Okay, pretty simple. Next file would be your requirements.txt. So in this basically file, what I'm going to tell that what version of Flask I'm going to be using. So that's why I have named it. And third would be our Dockerfile. Pretty fine. Now it seems a bit justified right now. Now let us fill the content of our Python Flask file. Now if you are aware of the Flask application, then it's great. And if not, you can just ignore the process. But I'm creating certain of a Flask application. So it would be very synonymous if you have a bit of idea regarding Python. And it's a wonderful framework for working in the backend. And I would suggest you to learn it. Now let us see it. Now, as you can see in our app.py file, it's written from Flask, import Flask. Basically, this is importing the Flask library. And here I'm defining an app variable with underscore name to read this application. Then I'm giving a route and I'm defining a function for the same that whenever I'm going to this route, it displays a hello world. A simple backend application that would also do the same task, like if you are creating a Node.js application, the way we are routing up, or a Spring Boot application where we are giving the route and just trying to run the application. So same process all over here, and it says run on the port 5000, okay? And if the host is 0.0.0. So that's our address name basically. Now you can, this is a very basic code for Flask. It's not a rocket science. So you can understand it if you have a little bit of a coding idea. And even also you can ignore this, because if we are given a task just to run this container, then you don't need to require to learn about all this backend stuff. Now we have populated our app.py file. Now in our Docker file, let us populate this. Now you have to understand the structure, folder structure. So everything is there inside the my Flask directory. So please make sure that, so app.py, Dockerfile and requirements.txt should be there. So now as you can see this code guys, so this is our Docker file and it has set of instructions written all over here to give command to our computer that what it needs to do to set up a configuration for our environment. So you can see we are using Python runtime like as Python as our parent image. So Python 3.9 Slim is being used all over here. Now next thing what we are doing basically, So you can see that the first code that is written all over here, that is Python 3.9 Slim. So basically what does it tell? This line specifies the base image for our Docker image. So we are using Python 3.9 Slim image, which is a lightweight version of the Python runtime. Then we are setting up work dir/app. So basically what it does, it is setting the working directory inside the container to /app. Okay, last time also we did it the same. Then what we are telling it to copy the requirements.txt file. So basically this line is copying the requirements.txt file from the host machine to the working directory in the Docker image. Okay, so I'll repeat once again. So it is basically copying the contents of the requirements.txt, okay, from the host machine to the working directory in the Docker image. Now I'm running the run pip install no cache dir/r requirements.txt. So basically what it is telling, it is pretty evident that we are installing Python packages specified in the requirements.txt file. So we are using the pip, and the no cache dir option ensures that pip does not cache the packages, okay, keeping the images smaller. And finally we have the copy. So this line copies the rest of our application code from the host machine to the working directory in the Docker image. And finally we are exposing the port 5000. So this line basically tells that the container listens on the port 5000, and it does not actually publish the port, but informs the Docker and the user that the application expects to use this port. Then we have env flask app equals to app.py. So basically this line is very, very important, and it is telling or basically setting up an environment variable flask app to app.py. Now Flask uses this environment variable to find the application. Okay, and finally we are putting cmd flask run host 0.0.0 and port 5000. So basically this line specifies the default command to run when the container starts. It tells Flask to start the application, making it accessible on all the network interfaces. So that's why I have written 0000 and on port 5000. Okay, so this is what our Docker file is looking like all over here. Okay, so you can go through this file, and you would understand that this is how an application, like when we are doing a backend stuff, so this is how we write our Docker file. Now we have completed our app.py file, we have completed our Docker file, and requirements.txt is still missing. Now you can see that I have written flask equals to 2.0.1. So that's our requirements.txt file. So I have specified the version of Flask which I want to use. Now let us go to our terminal. Okay. Now let us try to run the command. So let us first build the image. Okay. Okay. So as you can see, let us build our application. For the same purpose, I'm using docker build/t my flask command. So let us run this, and it is building our Docker application, and it is copying the requirements text, and finally it is on the 9th step. Now we have built our application. Now the next step would be running our application. So in order to run this container, I'm going to type docker run, then /d/p on the port 5000 and 5000 my flask. So you can see we have used certain flags like /d/p, and we are publishing it on the port 5000, and this is our working directory my flask. So let us run this, and you can easily see that our application is, our container is finally running, and we are getting some encrypted code all over here, so just leave it. So in this way we are basically setting our environment for our any application, like we are building a front end or a back end application. So we can include a Dockerfile, and which is going to set up our environment for our given application. So that was all for today's video, guys. I hope so you would have enjoyed our today's video on Dockerfile tutorial at Simplilearn.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.